Did you know that almost 50% of Americans live with at least one chronic disease? Would you like to greatly reduce your risk of disease, improve and even reverse the disease you may already have? Welcome to Healing Power of Plant Foods podcast, where April Ashcroft will discuss the power of plant foods and how they can have a positive effect on your health and help you look and feel like a kid again.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Healing Power of Plant Foods podcast, where I'm going to be sharing with you the research about plant foods and how they can help you to achieve optimal health and decrease risk of disease. We don't have to have a heart attack. We don't have to have a stroke. We don't have to get demented and lose our mind. We don't have to get diabetes, and we can greatly reduce our risk of cancer and many other diseases. And the reason this excites me so much is because I have a strong family history of all these Western diseases. And before I get into the meat of my presentation, I am going to introduce you to my family and tell you just a little bit about them. So starting off, this is my mother. She died when I was 5 years old of cancer. And I don't remember her suffering much because I was a pretty young little girl at the time. And when she passed away, we moved in with my grandparents. And this was my grandmother. She had diabetes, and she had that as far back as I can remember. And she was in and out of rest homes in her later years, and we would go visit her. And so not only did we see her suffering from the consequences of that disease, but we also saw many other people with diseases that were suffering. And this is my grandfather, my dad's dad, and he was relatively healthy till he was in his early 70s. And he ended up in the hospital, was diagnosed with diabetes, and never came out. He had a heart attack. And these are my grandparents on my mom's side, and they both had heart disease, diabetes, they both had strokes, and they suffered greatly in their latter years. And then my Uncle Fred, he had diabetes, heart disease, bypass surgeries, kidney failure, went on dialysis, and finally took himself off because he was suffering so much. And this is my mom's sister, my aunt, and she got diabetes in her early 40s, had bypass surgeries for heart disease. She had strokes, many mini strokes, and suffered greatly in her latter years. And this is my dad. He had a heart attack at age 60, got diagnosed with diabetes in his early 70s, and died of pancreatic cancer when he was 73. Am I doomed? Is this my genetic destiny? I never really believed that it was, and way back in my early years, in my early 20s, when I was kind of watching my family go through these things, I decided that I wanted to do something different. I knew that there was something that I could do to reverse what many would say is my genetic destiny. And come to find out, that's so true. Brenda Davis, registered dietitian, she says, genetics is the loaded gun and diet and lifestyle pull the trigger. And that is very exciting to me. So back in my early 20s, I was very much into the standard American diet way of eating. I loved cheese pizzas and ate a lot of it. And I started putting on some weight, so I went to the gym and started enjoying exercise and found that I could eat what I want and work hard and not put on weight too badly, although I was very close with the scale. And it became this vicious cycle of eating a lot, exercising to work it off, getting on the scale, and getting depressed. And that is no way to live. I decided that that was a very unhealthy attitude about my health. And at the same time, I was feeling really tired and pretty lousy most of the time. I had no energy, I was very fatigued a lot. And so I went to the doctor, and he did what doctors do best, and that's he gave me a prescription and told me I'd be taking this for the rest of my life. And I said, wait a second, that's not the road I want to take. And right about that same time, a friend of mine gave me 2 books. And she had no idea what I was dealing with, actually. She must have been inspired. But she gave me these 2 books, The Mcdougall Plan and Diet for a New America. And I read both of these books and was very interested in the information that was presented. I had a interest in nutrition, had for many years, and was kind of looking into better ways of being healthy and eating. And these books were great, but they promoted a vegetarian diet, which is not something that I wanted to do. I loved my yogurt and my cheese and my, all my standard American kind of stuff. Although I was eating pretty healthy, I was eating whole wheat bread and beans, and grew up with with fruit trees and garden and things like that. But I loved, my standard American kind of stuff too. And then I stumbled onto this book called Fit for Life by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. And this little book just grabbed me for some reason. And I decided to give it a try for a short amount of time. I thought I was going to try this diet that they recommended, which was a plant-based diet. And I was going to go 100%. They didn't really recommend 100% necessarily. I mean, they said you can do that, but I thought, what the heck, I'm going to go all the way. And within a week, I felt amazing. My energy went from 0 to 10. I felt so much better. My skin cleared up. The fog lifted off my head, and I had more energy to work out at the gym. And I just felt so much better. And I was so very, very excited about this, and I wanted to tell everyone, but not everybody really wanted to hear all about it. And so I started teaching some classes with a friend of mine, actually, that was also doing plant-based nutrition, and she was doing some cooking classes, invited me to do them with her. So I started, and I've been teaching cooking classes ever since, and it's so fun to teach this information because there is a lot of sickness out there. In fact, these right here are 5 of the top 10 leading killers in our country. Heart disease at 659,041 is our number 1 killer, and that is a food-borne illness. And cancer is number 2, close second, and then stroke, I believe, is number 4, and then Alzheimer's, and then diabetes. And those are 5 of the top 10. And most of these all of these have a dietary component. And we're just going to talk about some of these different diseases and what we can do, what the science says, and what we can do about them, because it's in our power. Dr. Dean Ornish, this is somebody you may have heard in the news. He's been out there quite a bit for quite some time. He had a landmark study, tested the effects of a plant-based diet and simple lifestyle changes on participants with moderate to severe heart disease. Within weeks, 90% of the chest pain diminished. After just 1 month, blood flow to the heart improved. After a year, even severely blocked arteries had been reopened. My grandma had severely blocked arteries, almost 100%. I remember seeing the pictures of them, and I thought, wow, that's crazy. And to know that they can be opened up like that is miraculous. But it really isn't miraculous. It's just what happens when we feed the body right. And then Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he kind of repeated this study. He says he's the director of preventive cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic, and he says heart disease is a toothless paper tiger that need never exist, and if it does exist, it need never progress. And he did studies at the Cleveland Clinic where he tested this same approach that Dean Ornish did on patients with severe heart disease and published similar results. 30 years later, all of the compliant patients are still thriving. A look at many clinical trials and observational studies show that a plant-based diet can reduce high blood pressure by 34%, reduce risk of coronary heart disease by 40%, and reduce inflammation, which inflammation is a key component with every disease. So what's so wonderful about plant foods? Let's talk about some of those. Leafy green vegetables, something that we might get 1 little serving a day, possibly, if we have a piece of lettuce on our hamburger. Eating just 3.5 servings a week of greens has been shown to cut your risk of heart attack by 67%. Greens contain an antioxidant called lutein, and people with the highest levels of lutein in their blood have the cleanest arteries with no atherosclerosis. Leafy greens help the body produce nitric oxide, which keeps the inside of your blood vessels like Teflon. If you've ever used a Teflon skillet, you know how that oil slides right around. We want our blood to slide around our arteries, just like that Teflon. Nitric oxide is the most powerful vasodilator, meaning that it makes your arteries dilate to their fullest. So when you're going up a flight of stairs, or you're out doing a run or aerobics or whatever you're doing, your blood vessels can expand and allow for that needed increased blood flow. What about tomatoes? Those who eat tomatoes regularly have 50% less risk of heart attack and stroke. Tomatoes contain lycopene, which prevents oxidation of LDL, decreasing cholesterol buildup in your arteries. Berries. In the Nurses' Health Study, women were followed for 18 years. 3 or more weekly servings of blueberries or strawberries was linked to 34% reduced risk of a heart attack. And nuts are wonderful as well. Eating 5 or more servings of nuts per week is estimated to reduce the risk of coronary heart disease by 35%. Walnuts in particular have powerful effects on heart health. Researchers at Yale University found that individuals with type 2 diabetes at risk for cardiovascular disease that consume 2 ounces of walnuts per day, which is about half of a cup, which is kind of a lot, for 8 weeks had better endothelial function. And that endothelial function is what your endothelial cells is what produces that nitric oxide that green leafy vegetables produce. The blood vessels were able to dilate more in subjects who ate the walnuts. Nuts and seeds in general are rich in fiber, minerals, and antioxidants that prevent blood vessel inflammation and decrease inflammation throughout the body and lower cholesterol by reducing your risk of disease. More foods. We got beans. Beans is the magical food. The more you eat, the healthier you are. A 19-year-old study found that people who eat beans at least 4 times a week have a 21% lower risk of heart disease than those who eat them less than once a week. A study in 2007 showed that a half a cup of cooked pinto beans a day for 2 months lowered cholesterol by 20%. What about whole grains? One study showed that women who ate 2 to 3 servings of whole grain products daily were 30% less likely to have a heart attack and die from heart disease compared with women who ate less than 1 serving a week. All right, so there we go. There's the tools you need to reverse or decrease your risk of heart disease. What about cancer? The largest study on diet and cancer ever done shows the incidence of all cancers combined is lower among vegetarians than meat eaters, especially the fastest growing cancers such as lymphomas and leukemia. And this is in Dr. Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die. Dean Ornish, here we go again with Dean Ornish. He did some cancer studies. He put participants on a low-fat plant-based diet, walked 30 minutes a day, and 1 hour of stress management. After 1 year, their blood had 8 times the cancer-stopping power as patients eating the standard American diet. Slowed down growth of prostate cancer by 70%. There were some researchers that did the same test on breast cancer cells. They took blood from overweight postmenopausal women who ate SAD, or the standard American diet, and dripped their blood on 3 kinds of breast cancer cells. The standard American diet women suppressed cancer a little. Then they put women on a whole food, plant-based diet, daily exercise. 12 days later, they took those same women and dripped blood on their breast cancer cells again. The women's blood stopped cancer growth between 6 and 18% and increased apoptosis 20 to 30%. Apoptosis is cancer cell death. We want that. Cruciferous vegetables in particular, and those are kale, collards, broccoli, bok choy, arugula, watercress, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, turnips, radishes. They show that 3 servings of those vegetables per week reduce risk of prostate cancer by 41%. 1 serving of cruciferous vegetables a day reduce risk of breast cancer by 50%. And 1 serving of cabbage in particular per week reduce risk of pancreatic cancer by 38%, which is what my dad died of. Beans, peas, and lentils, legumes. A 6-year study tracking 32,000 people found those who eat 1 cup of beans, peas, or lentils twice a week cut the risk of colon cancer in half. This is the kind of study you want to look at. People that are studies that follow thousands and thousands of people for many years. This study was 32,000 people. They watched them for 6 years, or they studied them for 6 years and watched them for another 6 years after that to look for the cancers. What about onions? Onions and other allium family vegetables contain organosulfur compounds that prevent the development of cancers by detoxifying carcinogens and halting cancer cell growth. A large European study showed that involved 10 countries showed that those who eat the most onions have 55 to 80% reduction of all cancers. Mushrooms are also very anti-cancer. They contain aromatase inhibitors that keep estrogen levels low, and they also have angiogenesis inhibitors that keep tumors from spreading to other parts of the body. A Chinese study showed that women who ate at least 10 grams of fresh mushrooms a day, and that's equal to one button mushroom, one white button mushroom is 10 grams, and women who ate that every day had a 64% less risk of breast cancer. Why don't we hear this in our mainstream media? I have no idea. Okay, what about apples? Apples have potent antioxidants in the skin, in the skin of the apple. The peel is 10 times more effective at stopping cancer cell growth than in the flesh. So it's important that we eat the skin, buy organic and eat the skin, also keeping them from spreading, the tumors from spreading to other parts of the body. Studies show that people who eat an apple a day truly keep the doctor away. They have less oral, breast, colon, kidney, and ovarian cancers. Berries contain antioxidants. We hear a lot about berries and how great they are for us. These antioxidants prevent DNA damage that can lead to cancer. Like mushrooms, they have aromatase inhibitors and are anti-angiogenic. Again, that cancer spreading effect. Studies show the kids that eat the most fruits have the least cancers, the least adult cancers of all types. And fruit also has been shown to offer strong protection against certain cancers, especially oral, esophageal, lung, prostate, and pancreatic cancers. Flax seeds have anti-cancer properties as well. They're high in lignans, which convert to phytoestrogens in the body, and they are also a rich source of omega-3 fatty acids, which helps decrease inflammation. Women with breast cancer scheduled for surgery were divided into two groups. One group was given a muffin with 2 teaspoons of ground flax seeds. One group was given a muffin with no flax. The group with the flax had 71% less risk of death from cancer. Amazing. All right, let's move on to Alzheimer's disease. Yes, diseases of the brain are diet related. A scientist at Center for Alzheimer's Research states that diet and lifestyle changes could potentially prevent millions of cancers a year. There is an emergent consensus that what is good for our hearts is good for our heads. Clogging of the arteries inside our brain with atherosclerotic plaque is thought to play a pivotal role in the development of Alzheimer's disease. The 2014 Dietary and Lifestyle Guidelines for Prevention of Alzheimer's Disease, published in the journal Neurobiology of Aging, it says that vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains should replace meats and dairy products as primary staples of the diet. And this was out of Dr. Michael Greger. I mentioned him earlier in his book, How Not to Die. Great book. It's a very big book. I haven't even finished it yet, but it's a great read. Lots of great information. A 2019 study involving 921 elderly patients showed that those eating the most flavonoid-rich foods, such as kale, broccoli, beans, apples, and tomatoes, reduced the risk of Alzheimer's by 48% when compared with those who consumed the lowest amounts. Data from the Nurses' Health Study show that women who consumed at least 1 serving of blueberries and 2 servings of strawberries each week had slower rates of cognitive decline, as much as 2.5 years compared to those who didn't eat berries. The Harvard's Women's Health Study found that women with the highest saturated fat intake from meat, dairy, and processed food was 60 to 70% greater chance of cognitive deterioration over time. Mushrooms are great for the brain as well as good for cancer. Mushrooms are the richest source of an antioxidant called ergothioneine, and they're highest in oyster mushrooms, but they are found in other mushrooms. Ergothioneine is found in almost all human cell tissue types and tends to accumulate in tissues exposed to high levels of oxidation. The brain is one of those. Oxidative damage is thought to be a major contributor to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Studies indicate ergothioneine may protect the brain from oxidative damage, helping to prevent neurodegenerative diseases. More studies about Alzheimer's. In 2018, A study published in Neurology, researchers found that green leafy vegetables were associated with slower cognitive decline in dementia-free older adults, average age 81. Benefits appeared with just one single serving of leafy greens a day. The rate of cognitive decline among those who consume the most greens compared to those who consume the least was the equivalent of being 11 years younger. Pretty exciting stuff. All right, type 2 diabetes. This is something that everyone in my family seems to have, so I love this information. In 2003 study funded by the National Institute of Health, they determined that a plant-based diet controlled blood sugar 3 times more effectively than a traditional diabetes diet that limited calories and carbohydrates. Within weeks on a plant-based diet, the participants lost weight, insulin sensitivity improved, and A1C levels dropped. And in some cases, you never knew that they even had the disease. So you can get rid of diabetes if you have it, type 2 diabetes. Based on the study of 89,000 Californians, flexitarians, people who eat meat once a week, cut the rate of diabetes by 28%. Those who cut out all meat except fish cut their risk in half. Those who cut all meat, including fish, reduced risk by 61%, and vegans who don't eat any animal products at all dropped their risk of diabetes by 78%. Brenda Davis, she's a registered dietitian. She's been working with people in the Marshall Islands. These Marshallese people have some of the highest rates of diabetes and diabetic death and amputations due to diabetes in the world, the largest rates in the world. Whole food plant-based diet rich in intact carbohydrates, whole grains, beans, squash, yams, sweet potatoes, fruit, and greens was a part of this program. Exercise was also a part of the program. At 6 months, there was a 50-plus point reduction in fasting blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C reduced by 2 points, and CRP by 1 to 2 points. And that CRP is a marker of inflammation in the body that increases risk of heart disease. So you're decreasing risk of diabetes as well as heart disease right at the same time. Leafy green vegetables. Okay, we're back to them again. One study reported that each daily serving of leafy greens produced 9% decreased risk of diabetes. Leafy greens and other non-starchy vegetables have almost no effect on blood glucose. Beans low in glycemic load due to their protein and abundant fiber. They're digested slowly, have a stabilizing effect on blood sugar, which promotes satiety and helps to prevent food cravings. And what about whole grains and diabetes? A Danish study followed 55,000 people ages 50 to 65 without diabetes and followed them for 15 years. Those consuming at least 3 or 4 servings of whole grains a day were 20 to 40% less likely to develop diabetes than those consuming the least. And these pictures, by the way, are all stuff that I cook and make on a regular basis, so I don't go hungry at all. Fruit. One study showed that eating 3 servings of fresh fruit each day is associated with an 18% decreased risk of diabetes. If you have diabetes and you need to stick to the lower sugar fruits like berries, kiwis, and melons, and then once you get rid of your diabetes, then you can start eating more of the other fruits. Nurses' Health Study found that 27% reduced risk of diabetes in nurses who ate 5 or more servings of nuts per week. So nuts are great for the heart and for diabetes. Depression. Does food really have an effect on our mental state? Absolutely does. A population-based study published in Public Health Nutrition Journal states that higher consumption of vegetables may cut the odds of developing depression by as much as 62%. Studies show that the more fruits and vegetables you eat, the happier, calmer, and more energetic you may feel. And you may think differently. You might think eating all this good, healthy food is going to make you depressed, but it actually can help make you happier. For your diet to have a meaningful psychological impact, you may need to consume approximately 7 servings of fruits and 8 servings of vegetables a day. So the more you're getting, the more benefit you're getting. The more you're eating, the more benefit you're getting from it. What about UTIs, urinary tract infections? According to a study published in Scientific Reports, researchers tracked UTI incidence rates by For 9,724 vegetarians and non-vegetarian participants, results showed that 60% decreased risk for UTIs among those following a vegetarian diet. Poultry and pork contain a strain of E. coli bacteria normally associated with UTIs, and the fiber from plant foods better regulate gut bacteria, protecting you as well. What about COVID-19? That is the big news of the day. But there are some small studies coming out about the benefits of a good, healthy diet for reducing your risk of getting major problems with COVID. This clinical study examining the effects of a plant-based diet on COVID-19 prevention and management, they're yet scarce, but very recently there was one published, population-based case control study in 6 countries investigated the association between dietary patterns and COVID-19. Following a plant-based dietary pattern was associated with 73% lower odds of moderate to severe COVID-19-like illness. In contrast, those individuals following a low-carbohydrate, high-protein diet, which is very popular these days, they had a substantially greater odds of moderate to severe COVID. The reservation must be made, however, that conclusions of this study were based on rather small sample cases, and the diet was self-reported. Whether a plant-based diet might be useful to alleviate symptoms related to long COVID has not yet been examined in clinical trials. A plant-based diet decreases risk of all those other diseases that can make you more susceptible to COVID, like they've talked about, like heart disease and diabetes and cancer. You're much more receptive to having bad cases of COVID when you've got those things. And those can all be helped greatly with lots of plant foods. What about weight loss for plant-based eating? Fruits and vegetables on average are 80 to 90% water. How many calories does water have? 0. And they are also full of fiber, and some of that fiber has no calories. Fiber and water provide bulk to your food and help you to get full and stay full without calories. Vegetables contain less than 100 calories per pound, and you can eat huge quantities of these foods with almost no caloric impact. Compare that to over 1,000 calories in 1 pound of chicken or beef. Those who eat plant-based diets may have an 11% higher resting metabolic rate, burning more calories while you sleep. They have a higher gene expression and a fat-burning enzyme that shovels fat into the furnace of your cells. So one thing that's so great about all these plant foods is their antioxidant power. And we hear that word a lot, antioxidants, we need them. But what are they? They are, well, first of all, they're in plant foods. Much more of them are in plant foods than in animal foods. Iceberg lettuce, something that we think is, is not very healthy, has actually 17 units of antioxidants. Kale, on the other hand, has 1,770 units. Berries have 800 to 1,000. Cherries, 714. Salmon has a whopping 3, chicken 5, and eggs 4. So you can see the comparison there between plant foods and animal foods. So what do antioxidants do? What's so great about them? They protect the walls of your blood vessels. They increase nitric oxide production, decreasing artery stiffness. We talked about that nitric oxide production when we talked about green leafy vegetables. That's what produces that. Prevent blood clots from forming. They lower blood pressure, lower inflammation, decrease oxidation of LDL cholesterol. They protect your cells from DNA damage. They suppress the growth of cancer cells. They protect your eyes from damage, improves visual performance, protects the skin from DNA damage from the sun and premature aging. They help prevent oxidative stress, which is something that the brain is very susceptible to, and also associated with higher incidence of depression when our brains don't get enough antioxidants. Phytochemicals is another component of plant foods that are so beneficial for us. These unique compounds, they were discovered back in the 1980s, and they're especially high in cruciferous vegetables and allium vegetables. Allium vegetables are like onions, leeks, scallions, and they are very high in phytochemicals. And when you chop these foods, which is what we do usually when we use them, and we chew them, we create isothiocyanates that have been shown to inactivate carcinogens before cancer can even begin, increase the liver's ability to remove toxins, seek out damaged cells, try to repair them, and if they can't be fixed, they're destroyed and eliminated from the body. This is what these chemicals in these food do. This is amazing to me. They excrete estrogen and other hormones out of the body. They stimulate immune function. They have anti-inflammatory benefits that help you with allergies in allergy season, which we're going right into this time of year in the spring. They circulate throughout the body, offering protection for weeks after consumption. So when you're eating broccoli tonight for dinner, 2 weeks later, it's doing you some benefit. Plant foods also contain phytates. And this is kind of something that people are concerned about, but you don't need to be concerned about because they're very healthy for you. They're found in the seeds of plants, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. They protect your bones, so it increases bone density. They detoxify excess iron in the body that can be harmful. Petri dish studies have shown that phytates inhibit the growth of virtually all cancer cells tested so far. They have antioxidant activity, and now we know what antioxidants are, right? They are anti-inflammatory, and they have immune-enhancing activities. So it increases our immune system, which we want to do when we're wanting to fight off colds and sicknesses and COVID-19. High phytate intake has been associated with less heart disease, less diabetes, and fewer kidney stones. Another thing so great about plant foods is fiber. Fiber binds cholesterol and fats and moves it out of the body, reducing the amount of artery clogging fat in the blood vessels. Fiber excretes estrogen and other hormones out of the body. Fiber helps to stabilize blood sugar, decreases intestinal transit time. People eating plant-based diet move their food through the intestinal tract 1 to 2 days. Those on a more conventional standard American diet takes 4 to 5 days to pass through. Fiber is a prebiotic, which feeds the good bacteria in your gut. And gut health is really big in nutrition research these days. They're finding that gut health has to do with all sorts of diseases and the health of your entire body. Resistant starch is a type of fiber that is fermented in the large intestine. Good bacteria feed on this and produce short-chain fatty acids that are being shown to benefit all systems of the body. Resistant starch is high in beans, whole grains, cooked then cooled potatoes, although heated potatoes are fine, but they're better when they've cooled and then reheated, and green bananas. Fiber is only found in plant foods. Less than 3% of Americans get the minimum daily recommendation, which is 25 to 30 grams. Average Americans get about 15, and the Paleolithic diet used to be very popular. I don't know if it still is, but if you look at original Paleolithic people, they got an estimated 100 to 150 grams of fiber a day, and that is a lot of fiber. What about supplements? Do we need to be taking supplements? We got to be careful with supplements. Supplements, Dr. Neil Barnard, in his book, Foods That Fight Pain, he says supplements are no substitute for antioxidant foods. After all, beta-carotene pill contains only beta-carotene. Carrots, sweet potatoes, and spinach contain hundreds of other carotenoids in balance that our bodies are designed to accept, something that no pill will match. I always say man will never make what nature has already provided for us. He will never make anything better. Nature makes 8 forms of vitamin E and puts them into nuts, seeds, avocados in perfect balance with thousands of other nutrients to work with that vitamin E. Supplements contain one form, and if too much is taken from one form, it reduces the absorption of other forms that you're getting from other foods. So you want to be careful with supplements. The unique compounds in fresh fruits and vegetables, especially green cruciferous vegetables, cycle over and over, protecting your body for 3 to 5 days after consumption. Nothing that a vitamin or mineral pill will do for you. What about protein? We are so worried about protein in our country, and there's really no need for it. Popeye knew 80 years ago a great source of protein was spinach. And this elephant, he doesn't worry about protein, and look how big he is. He is eating grass all day. So white potatoes have 10.9% protein. Sweet potatoes, 6.8%. Iceberg lettuce, something, again, that we don't think is very healthy. It's got 25% protein. Spinach, 51.8%. Broccoli, 27.2%. Nuts and seeds, that's often something that we think is a good protein source, and it is, but it's not nearly as high as green leafy vegetables. 5 to 15% protein in nuts. Legumes, 21 to 31%. Whole grains, 9 to 17%. Fruits even have protein, 2% to 9, almost 10%. And then seeds are higher in nuts as far as protein goes. They have 12.4 to 21.6. So we're getting plenty of protein in all the foods that we're eating. We don't have to worry about protein. So how much protein do we need? Infants double their weight in 6 months, and that's the most that we will ever grow our entire life. So mother's milk is only 6% protein. So that's not very much to grow that baby as much as it needs to grow. Cow's milk has 3 to 4% protein, and that calf doubles his weight in 60 days, and it becomes a very, very large animal with just getting that small amount of protein when it's growing so fast. And then when it gets to be older, it gets to be bigger, it doesn't need as much protein, and that's why they're weaned from their mother. So with all this talk about plant foods, I gotta just address some animal foods, and these are just facts about animal foods. And so we're just going to go through that, and we can kind of compare it to the things that we've learned about plant foods. So animal foods have no fiber, and we know how important fiber is. They have very little antioxidants. They have no phytochemicals. Phyto means plants, so these phytochemicals are specific to plant foods. They're the only dietary source of cholesterol. They contain a significant amount of saturated fat. They're acid-forming in the body. They're pro-inflammatory. Meat cooked at high temperatures like frying, baking, roasting, and grilling contain heterocyclic amines, which are carcinogenic and increase risk of cancer. They raise IGF-1 levels, increasing risk of cancer. Milk products contain hormones. They supply 60 to 80% of ingested female sex hormones. Hormone levels raise within hours after consumption. That's what cow's milk is for. It's made to grow a baby cow. It's got growth hormones in it, and when we take that into our body, we are taking in those growth hormones, and we don't want to grow when we're 50, and that can cause cancer cells to grow. Conventional farm animals are injected with antibiotics, increasing antibiotic-resistant infections in us. 70% of medically important antibiotics in the United States are sold to use on animals. Just a few little things here on animal foods and cancer. The EPIC study, which is the European Protective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition study, they studied over 477,000 patients, found a 72% increased risk of pancreatic cancer for every 50 grams of chicken consumed daily. People who consume just 1.5 eggs per week have nearly 5 times the risk of colon cancer compared with those who consume less than 11 eggs per week. Women who eat more grilled, barbecued, or smoked meats have 47% higher odds of breast cancer. Those who also had a low fruit and vegetable intake had 74% higher odds of breast cancer. So just to conclude, the more whole, colorful, minimally processed plant foods you eat, especially leafy green vegetables, the healthier you're going to be. The original source of all nutrients is the ground, except for vitamin D, which comes from the sun. And vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone, and it's formed in the body when your skin is exposed to sunlight. So we are heading into spring. It is May. What is it? It's March right now. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's springtime, and we're heading into sun season. We need to get out in the sun and get our vitamin D. Just a few words from the experts. There are no. This is from T. Colin Campbell, the author of the China Study. I highly recommend that book. There are no nutrients in animal-based foods that can't be better obtained in plant-based foods. John Westerdahl, he says, foods from plants prevent the diseases that are killing us. Food from plants promotes health, longevity, beauty, and vitality. And Dr. Joel Fuhrman, the more nutrient-dense food you consume, the faster your health will improve. Fat will melt away, the need for medication will lessen, and you will reverse the disease process. And Brenda Davis, Again, every cell of your body is a product of what you put in your mouth, and it's the raw material that makes up your brain. And I want to leave you today with a challenge. If you're ready to jump into plant-based nutrition, let's start and just try it for 3 weeks. 8 to 10 servings of fruits, of vegetables a day. And if you're really gung-ho and really want to go over the top, aim for a pound of greens and make sure 2 of those are cruciferous. 3 to 4 servings of fruits, at least a half a cup of legumes, which is beans, peas, and lentils, 3 to 5 servings of whole grains a day, and an ounce of nuts and seeds or avocado. And this is depending on your weight loss goals. If you're wanting to lose some weight, you'll want to decrease that to maybe 2 to 3 ounces at the very most. So if you're interested in learning more about plant-based nutrition, you can check out my website at healthforlifecooking.com. And just remember, I'll leave with you too, that I do cooking classes. If you live in the St. George area, I do cooking classes and through Dixie State University Community Education and ICL. And on my website, I've got delicious plant-based recipes and cooking videos, podcasts of my favorite nutrition experts, and much, much more. And before I go, I just want to tell you that the best gift that you can give to yourself and your loved ones is a healthier you. And one of the best ways to achieve that great health is by eating more plants. And I wish you the very best of health for the rest of your life.
This has been the Healing Power of Plant Foods podcast with April Ashcroft. If you're interested in learning how to prepare delicious plant-based meals, attend one of our cooking classes offered by Dixie State University Community Education or the Institute of Continued Learning. For recipes and more information, visit her website, healthforlifecooking.com. This has been a production from a podcast studio.